Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I'm a super fan of CCA. Had such a warm relationship with generations of classes and generations of instructors here. I've netted from the alumni stream two wonderful collaborators, Carly Borman and Mac McComb. For my nefarious purposes, of course. And Ron and Anita Wornick, over the years, so much friendship and so many kindnesses have passed between us. It's just thrilling and wonderful. Thank you for the cue. It's thrilling, Anita. It's thrilling to see you here, to see your family here. I know Ron would be here if he could make it. It really runs deep for me here. So I have a grand title of a visiting professor, but really what it's an opportunity for me to have fun with the students and have a fun or an opportunity to share a little bit of our craft, a little bit of the excitement about what we do. I don't have to do the heavy lifting. Russell and Kathy are really teaching it. I just get to kind of bounce around. I mean, it's a cushy gig. I'm very grateful for it. So I'll start off with a little bit of an introduction. I'm a sawyer. Sawyers make useful bits of lumber out of logs. However, you can take that a little bit narrowly or maybe expand the definition a little bit. Those look useful. Those look useful, but also in a different way. This is more, I mean, compared to teaching a class, I would say this is more youth outreach. It's a sculpture in a playground in Larkspur, Marin Country Mart, and to try to express, harness, and encourage the joy of the little monsters in the natural world. That's the goal. So that's also kind of good looking. Trees that were about to be ground up on Highway 1, actually. Eucalyptus 7 or 8 feet across each. We'll talk a little bit later about knowing beauty when you see it, and we hope for that. The nuts and bolts. That's looks like sawmilling to me. A little extraction, some fancy saw work. I don't think Weyerhaeuser does much of that. A sculpture on the roof of the Facebook building. A moment where you can start to see what's inside. And just plain good looking. I want to really observe, share some observations about in this process of our craft and this process of what we see unfolding of what we're learning. I'm going to keep it short. I'm going to lean on Catherine and her prowess as an interlocutor here in a little bit, because we have a dialogue with material, and so we want to have a dialogue amongst us as well. trying to express what wood is to wood people is really hard because it's so profound. I don't really know. Maybe one way is if you imagine holding a rose in your hand. And what are you feeling? You're feeling it's this astonishment that it has it's sprung from the earth, but it's here with you. The dew is still on it. It's so fragile. It's so almost otherworldly, but you still feel so profoundly connected to it. But when you hold a piece of wood in your hand, it's also so beautiful, but we feel the past. We feel every travail. We feel every spring and every winter. The strength, the perseverance within it at the same time that fragility that we have this one moment together. So my friend and mentor, David Nash, says, wood is always leaving. It's a beauty, but it's an elegiac beauty. Can we just have this one more moment together? And I have something that is just before the memory begins. Is this what we can have? And for wood people, obviously I'm a lost cause. But it is really, really a bond that is never broken. And it's such an amazing experience for me to be able to spend my life and spend my career sharing and helping out the people who feel likewise. So there is an irony of being a sawyer. And one of them is that we search and adore this beauty, but the mechanisms and means that we use to try to preserve it and to have to experience it are not really always so gentle and beautiful. That's a little picture of my log yard, and I mean, I don't know what you all think. I'm appalled. Wow, yeah. Okay, anyway, let's just move on. So what did I do? Am I on the clicker? It's not quiet. Actually, that tracker can be pretty gentle. Also kind of. And yeah. Yep. Oh, there's a slice of life. That looks like the morning. Wondering what's going to happen next, I guess. That's this morning. Let's find that board we're looking for. Lessons in dynamic physics, I guess. Predictive geometries, maybe. It's necessary. It's really what it's about. I have to say, I prefer that part. So that's enough nar. It's been wonderful engaging with the students this semester. It's really been wonderful to share some of the specifics of the how and the why we do what we do. We haven't gotten to this portion of the class yet. I was thrilled to learn that there's a business, that you all have a business practices class, which is great because we have to make it work. You can't do a craft without the economics. You can't do a craft without the logistics. You can't do a craft without being able to carry it on. But for me, I don't want to do a craft unless it really speaks to me in a deep way, and you can feel that in the students. It's a really beautiful thing. And so we'll talk about sawing pattern, the math, and the species, and the this and that. I mean, they're probably lucky that I am not going into the depth that I could, but then when their eyes glaze over a little bit, we've been able to show them a little bit of the process. Share a little bit of the thought that can go into it, and then ultimately the magic that you take something that there's a tree that looks like that and reveals like that. There's lots of it for me that never gets old, but that being able to share that with them, I think is wonderful. We've been in class assignments, we've been focusing on listening, on taking small pieces of the wood, all these little bits and things that are around the sawmill, and trying to appreciate, but interrogate, what are they about? What could they be? Where do you find your joy in them? How is it that you're relating to those things? And listening, not just to the material, but listening is so important, because when we're making, we're a conduit, a connection between the natural world, its materials, its use, our clients, our culture, our joy and enjoyment. And it's so fundamentally collaborative that it's without that it breaks down. It's without that we lose the perspective. So I began sawing because I was making furniture, or I think better way to put it, I was attempting to teach myself how to make furniture. I think Russell and Catherine and Brian would have been a time machine for me, but it was not my fate. But during that immersion, I sensed that there was this tremendous gulf between the natural material and the people who were so passionate about using it. And at first I started to try to understand the processes for my own work, but then ultimately I decided that I wanted to be a bridge. I wanted to try to connect those two worlds that should be fused together, but somehow we're disconnected. And I really can't say that I knew what that would entail. From the gnarly parts, I think you kind of infer that I started to figure that out by this point. But it's my challenge, my personal challenge that I gave myself, even not knowing the path forward, I think was pressure. Which is that when you're a furniture maker, when you're working with wood, those few slivers that are in front of you are your whole world. Your appreciation and your focus on what is in, and gratitude for what is in front of you, sometimes frustration. Your gratitude for what's in front of you is so profound. And so I wanted to challenge myself that when we went to a completely different scale and pace, that I would try to retain that kernel of gratitude. And it's a challenge because our tools are so powerful. It's so much easier to act thoughtlessly. It is so much easier to just take instead of giving. We're in the Anthropocene, where maybe at best in the middle Anthropocene. I wouldn't be kind of suspect we might be in the late Anthropocene. We'll have to see how it plays. But our agency and appetites are so awesome, blunt, destructive, unsustainable. The unsustainable, I think, comes from a lack of perspective. It comes from a not really thinking through what we want and the consequences of having what we want. We can do it, but we have to ask ourselves, should we? And for me, burrowing into the salvage resource, burrowing into the craft, burrowing into the gratitude of not wasting is one way that I'm trying to ask myself, what should we be doing? Okay, I'll get off my hobby horse. I want to share, I'll just share one project as a thought. So, wow, that's a really good looking stock photo. Monterey cypresses. Our local cypresses, twisty, gnarly. When we get to saw them, which is when they're old, they've gotten a little funny looking, like most of us do eventually. There's a project a few years back called Surf House. Amazing team. Feldman Architecture, Commune did the design, RJL built it. It's near a Great Break. Beautiful spot, but not a grand spot, but just a really nice spot. Easily could have been built out of Alaskan yellow cedar. No one would have batted an eye. Clear, rot resistant, would be gorgeous, but the consequence of doing it in that is that you're disrupting a natural ecosystem because that's what you want, and not really thinking through the consequences of your actions. So Feldman Architecture came to me and said, what do you think about doing it in Monterey cypress? Which, since I saw and sell Monterey cypress, I thought was a brilliant idea. But the thing is that Monterey cypress grows like that. It doesn't grow in a forest. And so it's knotty and twisty and this and that. It gives some beautiful clear lumber, but it also gives some very organic, knotty material. It gives in proportion. It's nature. So in conversation and in collaboration with the team and the clients, the thematics of the building became what the trees are and what the trees wanted to give, where the most rustic, knotty, and organic material is to the outsides and out in the landscape, and then in gradations as you get closer and within, it becomes sequentially more calm and really almost an emotional state as much as it is a built thing. But that interiority, that calm in the center, that's earned by respect, and respect in the context, and by the appropriate use of what that material is. And I just want to emphasize that that process is respect for the plant, but dialogue and respect and interrogation in the gentlest of ways, questioning what is it that we really want? How is it? What is the beauty that we see? What's the beauty that we feel? And that, in this case, made a little spark of alchemy. Oh my God, look at that beautiful pile of wood. Another, just a fun on the way out. A fun moment. So old Martino Compare, fabled furniture designer, 100 chairs in 100 days. I think this is his most famous project. Well, he rolls into town and he's going to start he's going to put up a show in one space, and I think he gave himself 4 days. So he spent 20 minutes, and this is our fabled wall of anomalies, otherwise known as the remnant bin, but you know, I rebranded it for that at the heart attack, right? So he rolled into town. 2 days later, 50. And the chairs and the mirror frames and the whatever. But the point being is that, and I hope this is inspirational. I hope it's inspirational for the class, is that it is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be joyous because you're here with the wood. You want to make stuff. You get to do it. But when you do it from in that little moment and these little shards of appreciation, and then you do it thoughtfully, truly through craft, it's a beautiful thing. Thanks, everybody. Okay, so now I think now Catherine.
Keep the mic from.
No, you keep the mic. Okay.
I just saw that about 35 minutes ago that we couldn't. But I'm happy to. I think Evan and I had one other public conversation. I know we have a lot of folks from within the CPA community and also from outside the school. There's probably, I'm gonna guess, a lot of different questions out there. If anyone has absolute pressing, please raise your hand. Otherwise, just thanks.
What's your favorite wood smell?
No, cottonwood, wet cottonwood. I don't think I have one, because I'm really not allowed to play favorites. But I think Bay Laurel, the local Baywood. It's culinary beautiful.
Would you say that my woodworking fellow, if I get a great piece of wood, that means peace. But later I would say, don't all trees have their own beauty in a different way? Do you have any perspective on that? Would you grade trees if trees kind of get better, or would you say that they're different?
Well, I mean, it's absolutely different. So, and that's the appreciation. So I have a wonderful, my favorite part of my job is as a appreciator and a wood sommelier. I love matchmaking. And sometimes it's someone will come with a specific idea. Often, which is wonderful, they come without a specific idea. I'll don't know, but I'll maybe know it when I see it, or I just want to explore or meet something new. And we're working with the class, we're also working with, is it about the specifics of the wood, the piece that they're working with? Are they trying to honor its beauty? And if that's their first project, the idea for the second project is let's talk about form, let's talk about volume. If one is rooted, let's make the next one air. If one is connected to the earth, let's make it a construction and use the craft. And so we're trying to sort of explicate the different aspects of the craft, but to your point, the different ways that we are relating to wood, all those possibilities. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the eucalyptus that you showed and the beauty of the eucalyptus and your passion for old machines?
Well, those are somewhat disparate topics, but sure.
You find out the logs, so they don't seem disparate in my mind.
You're talking about poofs and the poofettes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So this is utilizing eucalyptus is a long-standing interest of mine precisely because it's almost universally used. So it's a splinter in my heart, and get increasingly creative about how to address that. So, for instance, Treasure Island, Yerba Buena Island, the trees that came off the park, off of the island, we, in collaboration with CMG, the landscape architects, configured them into different geometric shapes that could be used for the parks. As it turns out, and then we've done with the Sproul Plaza and many public parks. As it turns out, it works great for that. Remember, eucalyptus is supposedly useless, right? We make engineered flooring that is very quiet and beautiful and hard and appropriate. You have to pick your spots, but we spent years working on that. What you're referring to is that we restored a vintage machine, which is a pattern mill. It's like a giant router. kind of, but it's operated empirically. You know, you're cranking the levers and you're doing this and that. And just as a goof, we thought, well, what if we not only made something round in eucalyptus, but we hollowed it out at the same time? Would it work outside? Would if there's a, not to get too wood dorky, but if eucalyptus always cracks, but if wood has the opportunity to change shape, it'll prefer not to crack because it can resolve its stresses just by deforming. And so we hollowed out these stools, and they were circular, and then they turned into ovals, and every one of them is its own stance. And it's a goof, but it works. So, I mean, you do have to have a little, I wouldn't say it's so practical, but anyway.
So we've taken the class, so I've worked with it twice. I just have a quick story. First time when I had a car full of 3 students. Went to work, had a full day, got in the car, driving. Like hard asleep, like the kind of asleep when you're a kid and you've been out in the sun all day, and you know. So the second trip though, I noticed that they were a little different. They were actually very energized. Leaving the trip this time. And I've been thinking a lot about what that could mean, but it might not mean just, you know, imposing ideas on my students, but I feel like, you know, the pace of working with wood as a class person, but also this requires a different pace. You mentioned pace in the lecture as well. I can't off the top of my head remember what the context was. But I guess it's really easy to say like we're working in practice and working long for a fast-paced world. But what is there more to it than that?
Well, I think so. So, watching furniture makers work, unless you're Martino Gobert, who's like a leaping lizard all over the shop, hyperkinetic in general, furniture makers are, their pace is extremely deceiving because part of it is not making mistakes and, you know, and retaining all your digits. But it's also a very, it's a very thoughtful and smooth process where a lot gets done, but you don't really see anyone moving fast. I came from the restaurant business, where you see people moving fast, or else. But what I love, though, while there's this steady progress in furniture making and this radical kind of daily reinvention in cooking, because, you know, you're only as good as the last dish you put out, and at the end of the night, you clean it up and you start again. And sawmilling is a little bit in between, where we have to keep it moving. We have production, but we have a lot of flow at the same time that we're playing a very long game. You know, we very often will keep a piece of wood for 5 to 8 years before it's ready to sell, because of the slow drying and the degree of wood care that are required. But it's kind of fascinating for me, and I think in a way I found my right spot by something that combines that pace and constant flow with something that is also grounded in that way.
I guess another piece of the pace thing I wonder about is how the relationships and dialogue play into that pace as well. Like our last visit, we had a client come. You know, for our students, it's a relationship that they haven't yet. It's not a part of necessarily of what they do in the day-to-day projects. Some definitely, but I think it's the thing about work that I realized for myself, but that also introduces the pace. into the work life too.
You mean like deadline pressure? Like, love you, babe, how about now? I so, evidently, so appreciate what you do. Where's my stuff? That kind of thing, yeah. Actually, that class missed it. And I really wanted them to see it. So a furniture maker came, we had pulled out a piece, that is the solution appeared for a table that they were making. He came with a template and it wasn't quite right. You know, sometimes you miss by an inch. You have a curving shape, you're imposing a geometry on it. You know, you have a good guess. I mean, our thought was credible, but it didn't work. And then what the next step is, and almost immediately, is for us to go through our digital database, start to brainstorm what are the deficits, what are the advantages, and then interview. What did you hear from the designer? What did the client tell you? What is really the right thing? And then keep after it. I would really love to see that slide go up. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll probably not get the right thing in the next one.
It always happens.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Curious, went from being a chef, discovering your passion for furniture making, really passion for wood. At some point, you purchased land, created, began a business. How did it go from a passion for wood and a business, finding clients, and then ultimately clients finding you? How did that work?
Well, did not purchase the land. Found a spot, engaged with the owners, rented it in a way that allowed us to grow organically. So it's not how businesses are done anymore, right? You raise capital and you make it or don't. I didn't raise capital because honestly, I didn't think that I had the expertise to be able to use that capital wisely. So kind of step by step, as it turned out, I'm far from a master marketer. Kind of hilariously not. Our capacity, experience, and the knowledge of what we're doing kind of turned out to grow together. I mean, it's not a model, but it's what happened.
If I can follow to that. So you mentioned Feldman architecture, familiar with it. Is most of your business through design firms or small makers, or what do you?
It's really all over the place. So our goal is that if you go to the trouble to find us and you want a tiny piece of wood, or you're going to do tunnel tops, which we did for the Presidio Trust, is that our aspiration is that our regard is the same. That's as a matter of principle, but it also is good business because there are big projects and there are small projects, and we have a very, very embracing the local salvage resource means that we have a tremendous range of inputs, very, very heterogeneous inputs, and a huge range of potential outcomes. If you start to wall yourself off from some of them, eventually you won't be fulfilling the mission of using a resource. So it's sort of an enforced diversification. That's part of it. Come talk to people. Because it was also, besides being, I think, a tremendous gift to the citizens of San Francisco and gift to the world, is a process. It was an extremely collaborative undertaking. But the first part was that we acted as consultants to the Presidio Trust. What is their resource and how could it be utilized, and is it suitable for this plan? And next, it was talking to the landscape architects, James Corner Field Operations. I was thinking of the black helicopters whenever about what were they really designing with? Because they were like, I mean, okay, what is this stuff? And helping do some of the detailing in terms of how are we going to make those beautiful sculptural benches last? You know, what are the appropriate dimensions? What are the logistics of actually sawing the stuff and storing it and drying it, and how can we use it, and when can we use it, and how long is it going to take, et cetera, et cetera. And then, but it was really able to come from 70% of that tunnel top, which was a big undertaking. It's 140,000 board feet, I think. Came from the property of the Presidio Trust itself, as they're doing successional replacement forestry, and then from the local salvage resource, we were able to buy the rest. Anyway, I mean, that's what we started off little and then tried to scale, but that's the kind of thing that we scale for, that we can do it opportunistically when something really consequential like that is an opportunity. Yes. Oh goodness, design something, give form. Oh, we couldn't possibly. We try. I'll put it this way. We really try to be helper hours. So sometimes that involves saving people from themselves. This kind of looks like a really bad idea. Or, you know, if you made this a 1/4 inch smaller, it would cost half as much. But that's pretty much the extent of it. We have a full-time project manager, Carly Gorman, former Wornick Award winner from there. And the key there is that she understands how things would actually be built, in addition to having the mind to be able to manage it and keep that complexity and keep things on the rails. So that's the helper out part. Only once in a while, if it's a public sculpture or something like that, we'll step in with some design when really it's the low-hanging fruit, and when I feel like our tools are uniquely suited for something that, oh my God, it's sitting like literally across from my office. Then we'll go there, but not so long.
There's something in there about collaboration and the sawyer that I want to come back to, but I think the question.
Professor Shively.
The most August. Yes.
We live in an era of extraordinary design on so many levels. But I feel that there's not an enormous attention to craft. Can you explain to me in your words why you think the idea of craft matters?
Well, there's the definition of craft in a time of architectural technologies and precision, I think is it's both a confusing time, and it's a time when so many things have been done so precisely, so much more precisely and perfectly than on the face of it has ever been possible before. But they've also been done in, you have to consider the material, and I think that you have to consider the what when we say craft, what are we asking of it, and how are we relating to it? Wood certainly is a little bit of a different animal in terms of metal fabrication, craft fabrication, CNC fabrication, whatever. But it's also, when you say craft and the hand, the work of the hand, is that there's a difference between what we specify and what we discover. So I'd make a distinction there in terms of what is grabbing onto us, is that the empirical act of discovery. It's not just a nostalgic moment for the way things were done, but it's what did the simple making of it discover in that material? What did it discover for our intention of that object? What are we revealing about ourselves and our connection to the material and to the world from which that is, especially in the case of wood, so evidently and for us emotionally came? I'd say that's what grabs me.
Just wondering what your thoughts are relative to engineered wood, whole, big scale, cross-laminated or structure. If the sensibility that you talk about, which is amazing and human and beautiful, can in some way connect with that big scale world of construction?
It can. I mean, the thing about mass timber, for instance, is I don't really understand enough about it in the bigger sense. Its consequence to the earth. I mean, on the face of it, right? It's awesome because wood is solar powered. So is ethanol. But that doesn't mean that we should be growing corn, or that it's really sustainable to grow corn to fuel our vehicles. And in the case of mass timber, what it's substituting for in terms of I-beam construction, that kind of thing, what its service life is, I couldn't say. I just don't know enough about it. But I think that that's part of that's a conversation that needs to be had, because, I didn't, for Oli's question, it also didn't, one thing that we didn't touch on is that we didn't touch on quality. We didn't touch on connection to the object. We didn't talk to the investment that we have functionally or emotionally into it in its creation, because ultimately sustainability is so much about how we value it, what its service life, but also how are we drawn to it in a way that we don't cast it aside? How does it become part of us? How does it become part of our values? And practically, how does it endure? We shouldn't be making stuff all the time. We should make it and use it and cherish it and pass it on. All of those things are questions whenever we talk about cycle and appropriateness.
Pass it on, it's a good phrase to live by. Skip the landfill kind of thing. I want to be respectful of time. I think we've actually gone a little bit over. But I wanted to thank Evan, of course, for being here tonight. And thank you all for joining us. If you haven't seen the exhibition yet, I can show it up through November 3rd. Also, if you have them follows it, please bring them back. Also, the class that we're teaching, the projects are going to be, we'll have a final review at the end of the semester, and the work will probably be traveling to a sustainability conference in Philadelphia in the spring. So we're very excited about the trajectory of this course, and that Evan is along on this wild ride with us. So, thank you all.
Thank you all.